And joining me in the studio this morning is Mr. William Tecku, back from the southern portions of the United States. You moved back up here to your Northwoods home. How you doing this morning?
Very well. How about yourself, Mark?
Doing very good. So you have been, well, you're a poet. Actually, let's go back a little further. You're a high school English teacher.
Yes, many
Yeah,
years. Mesa,
many
Arizona.
out in Mesa. Now, is that where your winter home is? Is it in the
No,
Maisie area? Or?
no. Our permanent home now is about 35 minutes northwest of the studio here.
Oh,
We're
okay.
in what's called the Eau Claire Lakes
Yeah,
area,
yeah,
chain of lakes. And we decided a few years ago, since our kids are Wisconsin residents, they didn't
yeah.
want to, I don't know why they couldn't handle the drought and everything out in Arizona. But, so they
Uh,
we decided to make northwestern Wisconsin our permanent home. So we
okay.
get away from time to time uh, in the winter, for example.
Yeah, so you
But
are a snowbird of
I
sorts. Yeah.
suppose so. Yeah, yeah, for sure. But we are cheeseheads and we are badgers at heart, and we
Yeah,
love the four seasons and this whole part of the state, part of the country.
that's one thing I can't convince my wife of is moving southward because she likes the four seasons.
Right.
And but it's yet I'm becoming more and more frustrated with winter
Hmm.
and getting around. And at my age, maybe you haven't experienced this, but my age, getting around mobility wise is kind of treacherous in the winter, and
Oh, for sure.
it's yeah, I'd
And
rather.
dealing with the snowfall and like this past winter up here, this area, tremendous devastation of fallen limbs
Oh
and
yeah,
trees
yeah,
and all that. So yeah, I think that's a factor, and you bet, it's something I'm cognizant of that I'd rather not deal with if I
right,
don't have to. But
sure, sure,
anyhow, it's always just great to be back. I'm never out of touch with the station
right,
that I love. I listen wherever we're at, listen online, and always appreciate the opportunities yourself and Jeff, Eric over past years to allow me to share my ink that I call reflections now, as opposed to poems, because I just feel that poetry maybe puts people off. I could be wrong, I see a lot of people nodding their heads in the audience, feeling put off. That's why it's reflections. It's
yeah,
reflections,
right,
and doing the scrolls is kind of part of that, And so, at any rate,
yeah. So you were a 25-year teacher at a high school English teacher level,
yeah.
and you've won numerous awards. Your students have for their creative writing
Hmm.
and literary magazines. And in addition, you wrote and taught the first lesson plans for school districts based on sports. Or am I reading this
Yeah,
right?
no, that's
For
true.
yeah,
Yeah,
as well as lyrics for Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, and Paul Simon. Tell me
yeah.
about that.
Well, I've always felt that literature does go, good literature, great literature, has always gone beyond the bounds of an American lit book. And when I was in high school, uh, my junior year particularly, uh, the English teacher that I had introduced me to Tolkien and E. E. Cummings.
Mm,
Um, one day he came in and he played a song that none of us had any inkling of, had any experience before. It was written by Arlo Guthrie. It's called Alice's Restaurant. Alice's Restaurant. And so, at any rate, I feel that I felt that when I was teaching American literature and creative writing in Mesa, Arizona, that I could likewise share uh, literature, song lyrics specifically, um, and for instance, poems or stories about sports. I mean,
mm,
I used excerpts of The Natural by Malamud to teach uh, uh, to teach different elements of short story writing and writing. And I did the same with with showing students the writing techniques that Bob Dylan used or Johnny Cash used
Sure.
to communicate their thoughts and feelings. And my school district, it's not like when you teach English, you can't just walk in with your own favorite material. You have to show your department chair, which I did, um, how I was going to teach the objectives of the course, American Lit or creative writing,
Yeah.
through the literature. And I was able to do that, and students really resonated to those songwriters. And when we look at Jeff and I were talking about this a little while ago uh, out of the studio here, and when you look at Dylan's recognition in terms of winning the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2016, and prior to that, Pulitzer Prize,
Yeah.
there's no question about the man's ability and what he has to share as a writer. So why not? Why not? Uh, Share his work or some of these other great lyricists
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, with uh, with students, as long as we're sharing. So Robert Frost or William Carlos Williams, Emily Dickinson, you name the
Yeah.
writers. Why not share these other
Mhm.
folks?
And then when you take away the musical instrumentation of these songs, it's amazing what they've written,
Hmm.
whether it's poetic
Right?
or limerickly, is
Hmm.
that the right
Yeah,
word?
yeah,
How these are put together in the structure of
right.
the lyrics for a song can stand alone on their own as a
Oh,
written word.
I mean, you go through so many of Dylan's well-known and lesser-known songs. Lesser known, I would say, Davy Moore, and maybe one of my favorites, Love Minus Zero, No Limit. And if you look at the the lyrics on the page, you can see the whole thought process. You can see his incorporation of classic poetic techniques, and it's just there. And it's something that that can be shared with students, whether they decide to get involved with their own writing, or like most people, just reading something, a poem or a story that moves them. So anyhow,
Yeah,
those were good years, interesting years. I'm glad I taught because it kept me working and alert um, to writing.
yeah,
And even though I taught a particular poem or story or a play so many times, I always felt like I learned something fresh when I went back to those hobbies. Kate Chopin, for instance, short short story writer, um, and that that helped me as a student of writing, to be teaching the material. I was
sure,
forced to think about it
right,
and think about it in fresh, I think, fresh ways, and that kind of me brought me back to the working on vertical scrolls. I started doing in the early '70s, and then decided to get back into it really last December.
yeah,
And I know we talked about this on air the last time I visited with you and your listeners.
mhm,
And so the scrolling goes on. I guess I'm working on, I just finished scroll number 6. Um,
So let's describe to our audience because they
yes,
really can't see this stuff
right.
unless they're, again, we do stream our conversations on YouTube and Facebook for those of you who want to see these things. But for our radio audience, uh, talk about these vertical or horizontal
What I'm
scrolls.
doing now is horizontal scrolls.
Okay.
And basically, I take pieces I've written over the years and new pieces and organize them around a theme. No
Hmm.
titles. They're all just separated by Roman numerals, no dates of publication.
Sure.
And so, for instance, on this most recent um, piece, um, it's actually called Road Reflections Volume 1.
Okay.
It's 14. parts, and it covers 7 different countries, 14 different settings. Begins in Alaska with the first page you see
Right.
is uh, a photograph of an Alaskan map. And the first piece you would read is about Mount Denali, or as the natives refer to it, uh, Denali. And then it goes from there to Asia. Um, it goes into Afghanistan. It goes into Italy. Let's see, um, Lucerne,
Wow.
Seville,
Mhm.
Ireland, the Caribbean. It's a little bit of globe trotting content wise, but that's the idea is to for me to share my thoughts at about these different places.
Yeah.
Um, and I call them reflections because to
Mhm.
me that's what they are. And in terms
Now,
of
did you travel to these locations?
yeah,
So these are personal reflections
right,
that you've had
right,
in your travels.
with one exception, full disclosure, one exception being Lhasa, Tibet.
Ah,
Um, our daughter Katie was there some years ago. I spent some time in Lhasa, and we talked about that, and I got a feeling from her about that experience,
okay.
and listening to the Buddhist monks chant in the temple there.
Mhm.
So I put that into my words. Um, and then there's actually like a piece about the Afghan woman, uh, or or about I believe was her last name. She was on the National Geographic covers twice.
Okay.
Once in her 30s, she had these piercing, um, incredibly, I think, magnetic, I think, green eyes.
Oh, I remember that picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was the most popular National Geographic
Yeah.
magazine ever.
Yeah.
Okay, 17 years later,
Yeah.
the guy who uh, took the photograph, that photographer was able to find her
Okay.
and took a photograph of her in her 40s, and that was on the cover. And
Wow.
so in that case, no, I wasn't there, but I tried to imagine how would she feel
Right.
being photographed, which she said in interviews, "Who wants to see my old woman's face?" And so anyhow, that's an example where I wasn't in that setting,
Right.
but I wrote about it from what I felt like her point of view, like Edgar Lee Masters did in Spoon River Anthology. I mean, he had 244 um, first-person narratives written
Mhm.
from different points of view.
Sure.
The point of view of the sheriff, the point of view of the librarian, and so on and so forth. And so, but the vast majority of these pieces are, yeah, places I've been the last few.
Yeah.
Kathy and I and the
So the
kids have been.
yeah. So the scroll you have now, how long or is it pencil?
This is a
End to
mere
end?
10 feet.
Just a 10 feet long.
Yeah, it's what I do is I think about the world's largest sturgeon caught
Right.
online, and
Yeah.
I go maybe I could make it a little longer than that, because,
Mm.
and not that these are fish stories
No.
per se, but yeah, it's just
No.
some are like March ruminations. I think that might be 4 feet, but what I like about doing this is having it on the wall, and I stopped teaching 13 years ago, retired 13 years ago. But I imagine if an English teacher had a scroll like this on his or her classroom wall, it's open.
Yeah.
Students can go up and read one part. They don't have to read it chronologically. It's a lesson plan, and I have lesson plans for these scrolls. If any of you folks listening now um, teach high school English or have family, friends who teach high school or college English,
Sure. Yeah.
you can contact me through inlandseascrolls.com. I'll be happy to reply to your interest and send you a scroll with lesson plans if you like.
Sure.
But I like
Because you
this.
have 5 scrolls now, right? You have the
Actually, I just finished the sixth,
Oh,
the
okay.
sixth,
So you have
and
Christmas coffee.
yep.
What's the Christmas coffee one about?
Well, the theme is sort of looking at the different aspects of Christmas that we've sort of associated with that time of year.
Mhm,
For example, I wrote one of the parts of Christmas coffee, and I forget how, Christmas coffee, I'm going to take a guess, 12 different parts.
sure.
But one um, had to do with um, two people outside of Bethlehem seeing this very bright star and imagining what was the purpose of that,
Mm,
and just reflecting on that. Also, from the point of view uh, of a Christmas Santa who had a heart attack at the mall and survived and had a near-death experience.
sure.
Also, the whole issue, the whole story narrative of going to Bethlehem and how it happened that there was no room in the inn. I have a piece where I imagine what would it be like, also from the point of view of the three kings, their thoughts about what was transpiring as they made their way to Bethlehem.
Sure.
Um, and then I thought, well, how about their camels? We're always wondering, what do camels think?
Yeah,
And they don't
I've
communicate a
always
whole lot.
wondered that. I'm
Yeah,
glad
I
you
mean,
could get into the mind of a camel
yeah, exactly.
and
What did the camels think about that
camel whisperer,
about
Bill
that first
Tecku.
Christmas?
Uh,
So there's a
so
piece in there about that.
yeah, so moving on because we got limited time, and I want
Sure.
to get to Heart to Heart, West of Eden,
Yeah.
and March
Ruminations.
Rumination.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of those.
Okay. So heart to heart, the theme is based on love, not just romantic love, from different points of view, from people who just start dating uh, to uh, people who marry or share a life together, living together,
Yeah.
um, to birth, um, to all the things associated with the broad topic of love. Not, as you said, not just romantic love. March ruminations. It's very focused on 3 or 4 uh, times in the month of March, um, whether it's thoughts about St. Patrick's Day or um, the Ides of March or
Hmm.
just an ice fishing shack before it's taken off a lake. So that's March ruminations. Um, and also, I guess when I was a kid, ice skating on the lake on our farm for the last time and shooting hoops and all that stuff. Um, Then West of Eden, which I haven't made publicly available, but if anyone is interested, let me
Hmm.
know.
Sure.
inlandsseascrolls.com. And that is, it's a series of thoughts about being in parts of the United States, beginning with the Northland and the Lake Superior region, and going out west through Kansas, through Nevada, down into Texas, Oklahoma. So that's west
Yeah.
of Eden. I refer
Sure.
to Eden being Wisconsin, of course.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then the latest piece, I'm probably overlooking one or two, but the latest is the roadreflections.com, I call it Globetrotter one.
Yeah.
And the first one, actually, of the 6 was created last summer as a vertical scroll, and that was called Summer Snapshots.
Mm,
So, anyways, it's a fun thing to do, to
yeah.
play around with. I haven't read or heard of any other creative writer uh, creating scrolls.
Sure.
And so I think, we'll see. Maybe a year from now we sit down and visit on air and I won't be scrolling.
Yeah.
But then maybe I will. You never
Maybe
know.
you will.
We'll see how the fishing goes.
I've always wondered if you ever thought about putting these on parchment paper with,
Hmm.
with the wood scrolls at either end. not that we're opening up the Torah or something,
Sure, sure.
there, but having that sort of visual effect.
I like where you're going with this, and Jeff said something along the same lines a little while ago,
Oh,
and I think you guys,
from a display sort of setting, it
yeah,
would
yeah,
make
I
it,
think to make it more what I call user friendly in a visual way.
yeah.
I mean, we can make it uh, friendly to listeners by reading it.
Hmm.
But when people are reading something on the wall, just silently,
Right.
for instance, I think there does need to be more of a visual context. So I am working on that. I very much appreciate that, and I will keep you posted. But yeah,
Sure.
I would like to see some kind of framing, and like you mentioned, parchment paper, maybe enlargement of font, so
Yes.
you don't have to be a foot away
Right.
or
With a
have your reading
magnifying glass.
glasses on to see the 14-point font. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea, and I
Very
will
cool.
follow up with that and get back to you.
Yeah.
Um, could I share even though Dylan, his
Yes.
birthday was yesterday, I would like to share this and um, one for our friends in Minnesota. This was one of two Dylan pieces, reflections. This one written in '78, and then one written in a couple years ago, 2021.
Sure.
And I don't know why, but I entitled it Dylan.
Yes.
I guess because it's about him and not,
Well,
you know,
keep it simple.
someone else. Yes, keep it focused. So here we go.
Yeah.
From my office windows facing east, tomato plants stare down a late spring frost. In and out of growing season, I wonder what feeds yet doesn't fade away. Some say it's spring memories that winter well. Others guess anything raised inside survives. Of course, there is something to be said about one poet's garden grown songs. Cross cultivated among rows of varying climates, Zimmy's birthday strums up from a day in May, marked on my calendar. His words and music, first heard on Minnesota's Iron Range, reach my ears that listen beyond the last fence. Like tomatoes, I too sing along. What chlorophyll bends his voice across the skins of ears toward a cactus sun? How does it stop and turn over acres of cool, dark air between our gates? Double plowed grasses that sprout through the garden's frosty real estate know his bounty feeds all above topsoil. A long time before ripening under his stage name, he was one note playing against the roar of the world. Unlike tomatoes, his songs cannot be harvested. Still, in sun, in snow, by sound, syllable, I try.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's lots of readings here. We're running out of time, so
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the Minnesota one because that's
Okay.
getting a little
Yeah.
lengthier.
Yeah.
But where? So let's tell
I have a
people
shorter
where they
piece.
can. Well,
But go ahead.
we'll just let people know where they can
All
find
right.
this
Sounds good.
information and
Sounds
how
good.
they can contact you. Now, the website I have is roadreflections.com,
Yes.
and your story scrolls are listed there. There's also a way that people can contact you there. Anything
Right.
that I'm missing as far as what was the other site that you mentioned?
Oh, I have an email that's
Oh, sorry,
specific to the scrolls, and that's inlandseascrolls.com. Reach me there. Uh,
Inland Sea as in
yes,
SEA, not the letter C.
correct,
SEA.
correct.
Yep. Okay.
Inlandseascrolls.com. Would love to hear your thoughts. Um, and like I said, if you're interested in having these scrolls shared with folks who teach English at the secondary or the college university level, I'll be happy to work with you on that. And then the other, like you mentioned, is the website that is sort of it's in progress, but there's quite a bit on it right now, and that's, roadreflections.com.
Mhm.
And, I am so thankful for the opportunity to share with your listeners this morning, Mark, and I'm so
Yeah.
happy, to hear you hosting in the morning.
Oh,
And
thank you.
and I you've really, uh I feel like you've come into your own, with what you're doing, and what you're doing is much more difficult if for you folks out there, it's much more difficult than you can imagine running the board and sharing all the content and keep everything on time the way
Yeah,
you
running
do.
the board's the easy part for me because 'cause I'm the engineer. It
Yes,
was,
your other hat, your other hat.
coming up with a lot of the different stories in the community and having more of a local, regional focus. That
Yes,
has
that's
been
great.
on purpose, and, I have been getting a lot of great comments for that, so I appreciate your
Absolutely.
feedback and your listenership and your support of the radio
Well,
station.
thank you.
That's been awesome, so thank you so much for coming in and,
My pleasure.
sharing your scrolls.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank
Ha
you so
have a
much,
good
Mark.
weekend.
You too.
Democracy Now! Coming up next here on WOJB.
From New York, this is Democracy Now! The woke-mind virus is basically a form of cultural Marxism. At the end of the day, it's an attack on the truth. And because it's a war on truth, I think we have no choice but to wage